Yeah, hello, welcome to this video. This is coverage for round 2 of the Sinquefield Cup, currently held in St. Louis. Yep, this is a bit late. I've been very busy today, so I didn't manage any earlier. What is game of the day for round 2? It's Topalov, white, Nakamura with black. So in round 2 we had we had two groups of people, those who won the first round and those who lost the first round, as we didn't have any draws. So Topalov Nakamura was a duel among two who had won their games. So if this is having a winner, they will lead the event. Let's see what happened in this game. Topalov went 1e4, and yeah, the Berlin, very popular nowadays. Something like the main line of the open games for sure. Yeah, Nakamura is not a super regular Berlin player. He does play it, but it's not like his exclusive weapon. Like if you look at Kramnik's games, he almost plays it all of the time. But for Nakamura, he switches around a little bit. Still something that Topalov could have expected. Went d3, bishop c5, and knight bd2. Yeah, an interesting move order here for white, early knight bd2. The nuances here are very subtle. It's one point of that move is okay, let me do one thing. If white castles, for example, then black has this opportunity. Yeah, it's an interesting way to play, where black looks at those two and gets to trade that knight from c6, which quite often is seen as an accomplishment. It's not clear that this is good for black or so, but well, I would have played that. I think my experience tells me that the knight on c6 is quite often not very well placed and likes to be exchanged. If white wants to avoid that, he sometimes plays the move c3, which is maybe the most popular move. But in that case, white is committed to that move. And that is not totally clear if you really need c3. In some cases, maybe when you want to take on c6 and get to this kind of pawn structure. Yeah, let me... Castles is probably losing a pawn. Huh? Yeah, okay. Anyway, I want to show what I'm talking about. This kind of structure, just ignore the fact that e5 might be hanging. Well, this is weak now. Yeah, if you want to take on c6, you want to do it with the pawn back on c2. So c3 is giving, limiting white a little bit, that move. So knight bd2 is an interesting alternative that is not playing c3 and not playing castling. If black goes knight d4 now, white can take and play knight f3. And this is awkward. You don't want to allow the capture there. And well, if you go back... Oh, that's hanging, huh? Oh wait, I cannot actually take it. I just spotted this one. Okay, so what is white going to do? Maybe castling. Then knight d4 might be an idea, right? There is no clear indication why that wouldn't work. Yeah, I thought that this is okay, but now looking at it, that's really not clear. Yeah. But okay, white has bishop c4. It's just a little bit different, let's say, than castles and c3. Nakamura played d6 and castles. So that happened after all. Those are very transposition heavy anyway, those openings. Difficult also to really get a grasp what is going on, because the move orders are so flexible. Knight e7. This is a modern way to play it that Nakamura chooses here. It has been played amongst others by Kramnik. The idea is that knight on c6 is not very well placed. If you look at that knight, it looks at two important squares, but they're both covered by that pawn. And quite often the knight is just not very good there. So knight e7, trying to get it to g6. White goes d4. And the interesting point now is that black is capturing and now retreating. It looks a little bit illogical at first. Why give white that big center? But the thing is, black has ideas to play against that center. associated with maybe c6 and d5 at the right moment, sometimes even f5, and we will see that idea in the game. Rook e1, that looks quite normal. Knight g6, that was the knight's destination. It's not the only move. Yeah, this also has been played in a game between Maxim Vachier-Lagrave and Sergei Karyakin. There are a couple of things that have been tried here, but knight g6 looks completely normal. h3, yeah, a move that is played very often in the open games here, in the Italian game, in the Rui Lopez, because white quite often feels a little bit annoyed by that pinning possibility, so he goes h3 and back. And knight h5. That's an interesting way to play. Yeah? Trying to use that f4 square. Black has given up a little bit of the center, but he has decently placed pieces. That bishop is putting some pressure on their pawn, and black's knight's trying to do something on the king side. It looked a bit more logical to me actually to play d5. However, after e5, knight, I'm sorry, that is just giving away a pawn. This is what I wanted to do. After this, it's not clear what black is doing with that knight now. Yeah, if you go back, a move like knight c4 is immensely awkward. Yeah, intending to cheek that knight. The problem is, if black is doing some kind of desperado, let's say like this and this, then white really has that classical Greek gift. Classic. Is it classic or classical? Well, it is well known that Greek gift sacrifice on h7 and black will get destroyed very quickly. So this, and then knight h5 is a bit better. But here it's not clear where those knights are going. Knight f1, and yeah, what exactly now? The knights seem a little bit misplaced there. I'm sorry. This is what Nakamura played. Knight c4, bishop c7, and now Topalov played d5, which according to my information is a novelty. An interesting move. We see that both sides, by the way, have spent quite a bit of time, so that was not the result of some deep preparation. They really played it over the board, the last moves. Yeah, d5. Why d5? It's a fairly logical move once you think of it. The pawn on d5 makes sure that this pawn stays on d6 and that this bishop, I'm painting rather badly here, that this bishop is just looking at his own pawn. Yeah, black was probably threatening to go d5, so white is preempting that with his own pawn push. Nakamura now played the knight to f4, which seems quite obvious. Yeah, and now is an interesting moment. Black now has a couple of options. He is absolutely not forced to do what he now played. He played a very direct, very sharp move. It was f5 that Nakamura played, and it seems that after this move he's at least in some trouble in a practical sense. Maybe there are better options. I'm not totally sure what's best. Maybe an idea is to take on d5 and do something like b5, and so that this bishop might be of some use on b6. It's very complicated, this position. White has some space with that pawn on d5, but black's pieces seem fairly active. If we think that, where's this knight going? It's either at the corner, the edge of the board, or e3 blocking that bishop. Let's say we go to e3 just to continue that line. Bishop d7 to cover this, and now black is ready to go like rook e8, bishop b6. That doesn't look too bad. Feels pretty complicated and unclear to me. Nakamura played f5, and this would be a really good move if it wasn't for Topalov's reply. After that said reply, it's not clear that white has a huge advantage, but it is very difficult to play. Let's see what happened. e5 played by Topalov. That's a very strong move. However, if you look at the position a little bit, you'll find out that this is also the only move that is somehow challenging black. Every other move is completely harmless. Yeah, what is the point of e5? It's rather sharp. As we see, it's a breakthrough in the center. And the very simple things are this. Okay, this is not possible. It gives away a piece. D takes. Okay, then white can push d6. And black has to go back to b8 here with that bishop. After which white has a number of interesting continuations. One simple continuation is to just take on e5. It's not clear that it is the best continuation, but I just want to show an example. Let's say takes here.
Check.
Check.
Check. Check.
Something like that is definitely very promising for white. One huge issue is that the move f5 is absolutely not fitting into this position. If black, this is just really a purely theoretical discussion, let's say, because it never could have happened in the game. But for example, if the pawn would be on f6, then black would be completely okay. Nothing happens, but e5 is just a tremendously weak square, as all of the dark squares are in the center. Yeah, that's very inconvenient. So what did Nakamura play? Probably the best defense he took with the knight on d5. Takes, and b3. So white is a pawn down, and does he have enough compensation? That can be answered with quite some certainty. Yes, he definitely has enough, and the real question is it more than enough? And if it is more than enough, by how much? How much better is white? And why is he better? The thing is that this bishop on c1, currently on c1, will get a fantastic role on the dark squares, on b2, in some cases also on a3. Especially on b2, we see what a diagonal. Yeah, that's fantastic. White has great play on that diagonal. Queen d4, for example, would build up that battery threatened mate on g7. Yeah, like here. Yeah, and queen up. And the thing is, black really has huge coordination issues as e5 is so weak. We unpaint e5 is weak, and the whole e file is vulnerable. Again, this is all due black having the pawn on f5. Yeah, this relatively, at the first glance, minor detail that the pawn is on f5 and not on f6, let's say, changes the position completely. Here, black has some real trouble to get his position coordinated. Nakamura played the move bishop d7 now, and I think that this is probably not that precise. I was thinking, while I'm not able to present something that is great for black, I was thinking he should maybe try something like that, getting this bishop out. However, white has very strong compensation here. Again, it will be something like, let's say, this. Yeah, and bishop c4 coming. This is quite comparable to the game, but here the bishop is on f5. White has good chances anyway, but it was an alternative to what Nakamura played. Bishop e6 instead of this also seems a little bit better, but it doesn't change the verdict that white has a fantastic compensation. And this is something not to be underestimated. If one side has compensation, that means that he's materially down for something, which very often means the initiative. And having compensation and having the initiative due to that is very often just meaning that this side is better because it's easier to play. It's easier to play forward chess than backward chess in most cases. So a very inconvenient position for Nakamura to play. Bishop to d7, as I said, was his choice. Bishop b2, rook e8, queen d4, all that looks very normal. Blocked with the queen. Now white, of course, didn't want to trade and now gets his bishop into play. Now we see how strong those bishops are. Fantastic. h6, yeah, black's position doesn't inspire much confidence, but he wanted to control g5 at least. Queen d4, simply threatening mate. Yeah, and black is already in a situation where he's only, he can only choose between things that are somewhat worse. He played queen f6, after which it will be a torture. I was thinking maybe rook e7, maybe this is stronger. However, if you look at this line, attending h5, you see that there's really huge pressure on black. A simple little problem is that a move like rook to e8 here is always is the wrong word, yeah, maybe there's something better, but at least can be answered by, oops, not that, can be answered by recapturing that pawn. And here black is just in trouble. He's not even material up for his bad position. Okay, so let's go back. He played queen to f6. Not a happy move, but it was only a choice between evils. Let's say there wasn't anything great anymore. Takes, and bishop takes. Yeah, black had to return a pawn. But this is now, after this return of the pawn, equal material, and white has the bishop pair in a wide open position. He also has a slightly better structure because of that isolated f-pawn. This is not so relevant at the moment as the f-pawn cannot be put under pressure. But the bishop pair alone is cementing white's advantage. And it is a very substantial one. Around this position, I think somewhat later, during the live broadcast, I had a look at that game, and I just said, okay, white will win this. And yeah, this is what basically describes the rest of the game. Let's say white is demonstrating technical play with the two bishops against, currently it's knight and bishop, but soonish this will change. Rook d1, that's an important move. White does not want to trade more pieces. Quite often you want to trade more pieces when you have the better endgame, because you may be a pawn up, yeah, you want to simplify and at the end use that pawn in a king and pawn endgame. Here it's important to keep the pressure on, and I think exchanges probably would have helped black to organize his defenses. So rook d1 is a good move. Bishop to e6. Yeah, that was tough to avoid. Here actually I was thinking that king takes f6 might be an idea. Nakamura took on e6 with the rook. I was thinking that this could be an idea. Yeah, getting rid of the bishop pair. White might take. Play here, and then at least we get some kind of activity.
Check.
Knight d5, king e5. Oh, sorry for that noise. That's my coffee maker. Yeah, but here black is somewhat active. It's not enough. We have to be perfectly objective there. But maybe it was a better practical chance than the capture on e6. It's tough to say, however. Both don't inspire much confidence. Yeah, and white secures that bishop. Now we have two bishops against two knights, the ideal distribution. Yeah, king f1 played by Topalov. It was interesting to play g3 as given by the computers. to look at this square and make sure that nothing happens there. But I'm not sure how serious it is. Jumped right in, b4. I think white is always keeping some advantage. f3, back, g3. Yeah, black cannot take here because of f4 and drawing terribly. And white will win that knight. Yeah, so jump back. Bishop to f2. Rook d8. Little threat. Rook knight e3 check. Rook e1. Yeah, and the next move is probably helping white. I think that he probably should have just stayed, let's say, with some non-move, king f6 or h5 or something. Maybe rook e5 is coming. King f6 does make quite some sense. This kind of move gives black still chances to hold this position. It's not fun at all. Two knights against two bishops is really fun. But you have some chances to hold. What he did is he went f4. And after g4, I think white has gained from that. Those two pawns, they might prove dangerous to get a passed pawn. And in general, advancing those pawns also might help in some kind of attack on the king. So this isn't really helping, but probably they had time. I was speculating that there might be some time issue. Okay, not that f4 is a double question mark move and totally terrible. It's just that I felt that not doing this probably would have been a bit tougher. Knight to g5 here. Yeah, not trading again. Yeah, white of course keeps the bishop. Yeah, he has gotten h4 in, so that g5 is under control. Knight c7, yeah, black wasn't able to take here.
Check.
Yeah, that's very awkward, something like that. So back to c7, just trying to build something fortress-like. Nope, that was the wrong button. Yeah, knight c7, h5, fixing that weakness on h6. That makes lots of sense. That bishop might attack it. King s6. Yeah, b5. Black is unleashing there on the queen side, trying to push that bishop back.
Check.
White checks. And now king g5. King g5 is a very risky move, to put it mildly. It is very difficult to do something against this with mate. I mean, very difficult is wrong. Black has ways to do something against it, but it's all related, or it's all comes with drawbacks. There is no a good clean solution now anymore. H right. White took. Yeah, bishop b3 was stronger. I'm sorry, that was a bit confusing. Topalov took, but bishop b3 would have been stronger. What is black doing now? His king cannot move, his knights cannot move, and if he does that, there's rook c1, and we have a counter attack going. If black takes, rook c5 is going to be played, and now it gets very difficult for black to find anything. You can hardly move. Yeah, the king cannot move, the knight cannot move, this knight cannot move. What is black's move? Yeah, it's very difficult. This rook is also tied down. Something like that, for example, is answered by this. Yeah, and that decides. Yeah, we cannot look at all the lines, but after bishop b3 is a win. It's really a win. That king f6 move has made things a little bit simpler. Topalov, however, took and played rook c1. This is also winning ultimately, but not as quickly as the other line. However, it's not really, it doesn't really matter, you know, because if you find a win in your game and you are reasonably sure that you will win that without any big hassle, complications or whatnot, then playing that is not a mistake. You might have something that is simpler or so. It's possible, but it's no mistake if you play something that does win ultimately and doesn't really put you in some kind of danger or in some risk. I mean, something like the game continuing, losing on time is always possible somehow. Yeah, so Topalov didn't play the strongest move with that bishop b3, but he played something that is totally enough. Rook e6, rook c5. Yeah, it has Zugzwang qualities. And a3. Very nice. Now black is in some kind of Zugzwang. What should he play? It's difficult. You cannot move this, cannot move the king. Pawns don't make much sense. The rook, but where? Yeah, the only move besides what he played, where is it? Rook e6. Yeah, that is the only move actually. Yeah, it is the only move. Otherwise something gets lost. So rook e6. And rook c1. Yeah, possibly getting the rook over there under some circumstances. It's a bit more flexible there than on the fifth. Yeah, rook c1 and knight e7, bishop f2 for bishop h4 mate. It's really amazing how often mating motifs play a decisive role in endgames. And g5. Yeah, pushing things forward and getting something going. Yeah, g5. Black doesn't really have much. He took it. Bishop takes. Knight d5, king g4. We shouldn't forget it's equal material, but white has some trump cards. He's got the h passer, very dangerous pawn. f4 is weak. The rook is active on c1, and his bishop will also be the better minor piece compared to the knight. So that's a very nice situation for white that probably is winning in the long run. Rook, king g7, and white took that pawn. So we've got a rook and pawn endgame in which black's drawing chances are very low. The problem is that white has two pawns, f pawn and h pawn, that will distract black's pieces, and during that time white has opportunity to invade on the queen side and try to pick up things here. Yeah, a5, trying to reduce the pawn count. But it doesn't really help anymore. Oops, I'm sorry. White can just take it.
Check.
Check. Yeah, and now this gets lost and a6 being played. Yeah, it is a very, very one-sided endgame here. And Topalov does a good job of converting. The game only lasts a couple of more moves.
Check. Check. Check.
Yeah, and that's it here. Nakamura resigned. Yeah, what to take from that game? A very interesting moment was here in the opening. We had some moves that are close to being at least theoretically known. And then black was faced with the decision how to play here. He didn't go for d5, but for that knight move. And now knight c4, back d5. I think that what black did, that knight here and now f5, is probably a bit too risky. The resulting positions are probably not hugely favorable for white, but they are much easier to play for white. So probably due to that, f5 is at least a bit risky, let's say. Yeah, that pawn sacrifice was strong, and now white was dominating on the dark squares, ultimately getting a very, very good middle game, and then end game, where black was pretty much helpless. It's quite, quite interesting or revealing, let's say, how important this pawn move is. Yeah, if that pawn would be on f6 or on f7, white would have very little compensation, but here it is really substantially strong what white has going with his bishops. Yeah, that was the game of the second round. There were a couple of other interesting games. Grishuk beat Vishy Anand with white in a nice, interesting game. There were a couple of short draws. I wonder, was there an additional decisive result? I'm currently a little bit mystified. Let me check. Yeah, of course, Magnus Carlsen. He played with black against Fabiano Caruana, and of course that sounds like a great pairing, and it was an interesting game. However, that game was completely decided on a huge time scramble by both sides, and therefore also the moves that both players played in that time trouble were pretty questionable, and I didn't want to look at that game so closely because we're essentially talking about almost a bullet game at the end from the time that they had left, and nobody wants to seriously analyze games that are played with that short time available for the players. It's just not very very nice to show, let's say, what kind of blunders they played in the time scramble. However, if you again get a video of that, it's quite entertaining to watch, I have to admit. Two great players struggling there with the time control. Okay, the next video will be on for round 3, and that will be much quicker compared to that. But yeah, I'm optimistic that I will be more on time in the future, because lots of things that I had to do are done. Yeah, I was kind of a little bit redesigning, if you want, my setup at home. Yeah, what some furniture I exchanged, and got rid of lots of technical stuff that I don't need anymore, and all that costs enormous time. But I'm now like almost done on 90 something %, I guess, with all what I wanted to do. So I'm more flexible now and quicker in doing the round reports, the game of the day videos for Sinquefield Cup. Okay, well, thanks for watching, guys. Till tomorrow. Or yeah, tomorrow is probably wrong. Yeah, till the next video.